let's continue. So MERN votes to open up our projects, and also we need to start the Mongo server. So mongod, and it's up and running. Cool. And clear. We're gonna start the development environment. So there we go. Starting both servers here. Alright, cool. So let's see, where did we leave off? Let's make another terminal right now. And it looks like I didn't commit yet, so let's do that really quick. Git add, git commit, finish, Redux setup. Looks good. And let's go into our client. Alright, so I think this is a good time to talk about project structure. So as most of you are well aware, all of our code is going to live within our source folder. And traditionally, Redux projects, there's a separate directory for containers, which basically means all your React components that are connected to the Redux store. And then your components folder is going to be all the other React components. That is normal and doesn't actually have to connect to the store. However, I went with a different strategy. Instead, for containers, I'm actually going to use it for all the components that's concerned with the structure of our application. Components is, once again, all of our React components, even the ones that are connected to the Redux store. And then when we add in React Router, I'm actually going to make directory source pages. I'm going to have a pages directory for each of our quote-unquote web pages of our entire application. So this folder will contain all of our specific application routes, and that will connect to our components. Okay, so with that out of the way, I think the first sensible component to build is the authentication component, since we just built the actions and reducers for it. So let's do that. So we're gonna put it inside of source components, and I'm gonna name it auth.jsx. Let's open up that file. There we go. Okay, so like every React component, there's the usual boilerplate. So import React from React, and yeah, auth is going to be a smart component, so we wanted to have access to state as well as the lifecycle hooks. So component did mount, and I believe that's the only one. All the other ones are deprecated now, from what I'm aware of. But let's do this. Extends, if I could spell, react.component, and a React class component needs a render method that returns JSX. Right now we're just going to do div, and of course we need to export our component. So that's the basics of a React component. I'm actually gonna destructure component here, just to reduce redundancy. And now we need to also connect it to our Redux store. So import connect from React Redux. Alright, so what does our auth component actually want to look like? I think we should start with the JSX and then work from there. So let's do that. So it's going to be a div, and also a note about React, everything has to live within or what's being returned has to be one specific child, so it's usually always wrapped within a div. However, if you want to not have the div markup, you could instead use what's called a fragment, and that comes from React, and you could destructure it like this, or you could do react.fragment, and that makes the compiled HTML a lot cleaner because you don't have random divs all over the place. But for this component, I don't think it matters, and I think we might style this outer div anyways, so we're just gonna leave it. So what is an auth? It's gonna be a form. Oops. And don't worry about the formatting. I have Prettier installed, so when I save, it'll pretty print. So, we need an input type text and value of username, or actually, it's gonna be username. Name is also username. Let's add some state to make this a little easier to manage. So gonna do a constructor props. React constructor always takes in props, which is sent in by the parent component. So important step there. So we need to inherit all the props using the super, and let's set some state. So what does the auth form need? It needs a username and password. Okay. So username is going to come from here, and we could destructure the username from state. This dot state. Just a reminder, destructuring just means that doing it this way means that you don't have to do this this dot state dot username or all the other state properties, because it can get redundant and more error prone. So what do we need? Inputs also need a on change function, so whenever the user types into the input, the value can change dynamically. And then for the onChange, you can set it as a property like this, and this will allow you to not need to bind this everywhere. But I don't really like the syntax of this within a JavaScript class, so instead I'm gonna actually do the manual binding here. So this dot, and actually that's a better name, handle change equals this dot handle change dot bind this. And binding this just means that we're using the correct this property, which like I said, you could get around with the arrow function like that. Then you don't need this line, but we're gonna go with this for now. So on change is gonna be equal to handle change, and this dot handle, yeah, that's right. Feel like I'm missing something. What else do I need here? Let's just add a label. Label. If I can spell. And this is going to be on no, not that. It's going to be for username. A lot of typos today. Label, username, oh, it should be in here. Username. And then we're going to repeat the same steps for the password field. Label for password. Closing tab. Inputs. Type. This one's going to be of type password, so you don't see the value. And password is coming from state, so let's add it here. Name is password, and this name refers to the label, so it knows where to put it. And then on change is going to be equal to this dot handle change, and then close the input. Save. Okay. That looks right. Oh, we need a button. So let's add that right here. Button. Submit. Type. Submit. Save. And then the form also needs an on submit. Submit. And it's going to be equal to this dot handle submit, which will implement now. So just like handle change, it's going to look pretty similar. And we also have to remember to bind handle submit equals to this dot handle submit dot bind this. Okay. So far so good. Now these functions don't do anything yet, but I think it's good enough to actually just test it out in the browser. So in our app, let's import it. Import auth from, and then path is going to be one level up into components, into auth. And we're just going to replace this with our auth. So auth. So there it is. Yep. Okay, so don't panic. You can't change anything because the onChange method currently doesn't do anything, which means that these values won't change if you type into it. But that's an easy fix. We'll put it here. Since these both are using the same handle change method, we're gonna do a little trick. So handle change is gonna take in the event, and then we're just gonna do this dot set state, and then e dot target dot name, to e dot target dot value. And that should let us type. So just to quickly explain this little shorthand, you could set object's key with a variable name if you use the bracket notation like this, and then the event target value is going to be whatever you type, and the name is going to refer to which input we're using. So that's also why all of these names and usernames have the same name, which is good convention. Okay. Yep, handle change pretty straightforward, but handle submit's a little trickier. So, once again, destructure username and password from this.state. And let's, we need to prevent default. Default. Let's check if I spelled that right. Prevent default. Okay. This will prevent the form from submitting, or the default submit action that HTML does, which will try to submit it to a server, which will refresh the page. And since React is a single page application, we don't want it to ever physically refresh. We're going to handle all the state within the application itself. And for now, let's just console log the username and password. Username, password. So let's open up the console. Don't worry about all of these quite yet. Let's see. So let's do username, password, and submit. And there are submits working. Our handle change is working. All right. So let's actually connect this to our Redux store, and in essence also connect it to our server. So let's get rid of that, and we're gonna actually do the connect right now. So do a connect, and so as a refresher, connect is coming from Redux from this line here. And the first parameter is the props that we're getting, or the properties that we're getting from the Redux store, which which we aren't getting anything. We're just submitting into it. So the next parameter is the one we actually care about, which is what actions we have access to. So we're gonna destructure the auth user action and the logout action. Let's see. We also have to import those. So let me try to remember where I put it. Okay. So import the auth user, and logout, and that's coming from /store/actions. So this parameter is mapping our store to props, and then this action is mapping our dispatches to props, which is the terminology that you will often hear when using Redux. Okay, once that is done, let's also, let's see. So if you remember auth user, if we go in there, it's gonna take the path, so login or register, as well as the data. And I want to reuse this component for both login and register. So we're actually gonna add a property that's given from the parent, and we're gonna call it auth type. From this.props, So then we could just do a this dot props dot dispatch type username password. Okay, so with the auth type property, we have to send it in from the parent component, which is this app here, or this file, the app component, I mean. All right, and that is gonna be auth type, and we're just gonna make it login. And if I remember correctly, that is the correct endpoint. So just to well, that should work. So let's do it then. The username, password, send this dot props dot dispatch is not a function. Handle submit. That's odd. What am I missing? Connect. The expert default connects. Handle submit is being called here, which does this. Dispatch. Oh, that's right. Auth user. I was using the wrong name. Okay, so auth user means that we're going to dispatch this action. Okay, there we go. Now let's try let's try that again. Username, password, and check our Redux store, and then we called set current user. So it was first Kelvin, and then this, and then we set it as username. And looks like I did a different token when I first did this, but we'll do that later. All right, that looks good. And I'm actually gonna change this up. So what this means is that if there's no auth type property being sent in, it's gonna default to login. So there we go. Yeah, I think that's